Good morning, ASEAN. This is Vienna from the ASEAN Breakfast Call. Today is the 25th of March, a beautiful Tuesday. I have my colleague Kim with us today.
Good morning, everyone.
Right, so the first news piece is from the Malay Mail Online talking about the MH370. Again, there's no substantial findings of MH370 yet. What they have reported in the Malay Mail Online is that the U.S. official alleges that the reason why Malaysia is not releasing all the information that they have is because they are worried about the red faces from their radar data. And this is because they think that by revealing some information, Malaysia might be revealing their country's security and technical deficiencies. Yeah. So, and this is also coming in the midst of an influx of international reports on Malaysia. For example, we have a news piece from Bloomberg Business Week talking about why Malaysia will say almost nothing about the missing plane, and also a news piece talking about can Malaysia actually salvage its public image. And Kim, do you want to share some thoughts about what you think about the MH370, especially coming from these few news pieces?
I'm wondering, is it true that Malaysia have weak radar and satellite systems? Like, is that why we still couldn't find MH370? I personally think that the statement from American investigator, it should be further proven lah. But then, if it is proven that we actually have weak radar and satellite system, and that is the reason why we couldn't tell the public what's happening to MH370, I think government should really stop doing it. It's like, it's okay to let people know that we are not too sure about what's happening in our own country, what's happening to MH370. If we know that we are not able to investigate what's wrong with MH370, it is the time for us to get help from the US or from China, from India, or like any country that's willing to help, that's have the system, like anything that they know that could help us. Not just saying that okay, everything is under control, but actually it is not under control, and that we actually doesn't know what happened to MH370, and we just constantly saying things like contradictory to each statement that they made for the authorities of Malaysia. So it confused all the publics, like what happened to MH370, and it also spoiled our images, like as a company that is growing, in ASEAN. So I think they should really tell what's happening instead of.
I think, for example, from what Business Week talk about why Malaysia will say almost nothing about the missing flight, is because they think that this lack of accountability has its roots in Malaysian local politics. Because if most of our listeners might know or might not know, Malaysia has been ruled by the same ruling coalition since independence. Yeah, you're talking about more than 5 decades of rule. So since then, there's a lack of accountability that filters down to state-owned enterprises like Malaysia Airlines, which is notorious in Malaysia for insider dealing, corruption, and lack of transparency. So they're talking about corruption, how 350 million was lost. And after that, they were also talking about how the weak institutions made all this even worse. And also, they brought up a point about Malaysia's fraught relationship with other Muslim majority countries, and this makes U.S. Or I should say the relationship between KL and the U.S. not really very transparent since the beginning. Yeah. So and of course there are claims from the U.S. talking about how Malaysia is one of the places where Muslim terrorists would come to for meetings, and also for one of their, let's say, rehabilitation if they get injured.
I think they made this kind of comments partly because of our security is not really that strict, I would say, but still this is just an assumptions from the news piece, so it doesn't represent both of our stance.
Because of course we noted that some of the local bloggers talk about how there's currently a conspiracy of Western media against Malaysia government.
I think it is not a conspiracy like what the bloggers said. It's just maybe assumptions like they could make like according to what is happening in Malaysia, because it is really unstable how the statement made from our authorities keep changing, and then it triggers people to make assumption. If our authorities can make clear statements and then it never contradict with each statement, then all the public will be satisfied with the statement that you made.
Right. So they also included recommendation of how Malaysia can salvage and save its public image. For example, one, like you mentioned, Malaysia's government needs to speak with a single voice that doesn't contradict each other. And two, to get over the dislike of open cooperation with Western governments. And three, to disclose everything they know about Flight 370 on the night of its disappearance. And four, to stop trying to link the plane's disappearance to domestic political opponents like Anwar, which, by the way, I should say Anwar couldn't run for the election. So he sent his wife in his place. And also, as predicted, his wife won the recent elections that just has its results announced yesterday. So that's point number 4. And that's the recommendation to Malaysian government. And we do hope, again, that MH370, the truth will be out soon.
I really hope the authorities can take note of these things, because it's action really need to be taken in the need of searching MH370 and in how we need to comfort all the public too.
Right. All right, now moving on from Malay land to the land of Siam. From The Nation, talking about how temples lead the fight to save the last Siamese rosewood reserve. So the last reserve of Siamese rosewood forest, right, is threatened by illegal logging. And what they have done, I think, which is pretty inspiring, is that the monks and the villagers in Ubon Ratchathani district have teamed up to protect their 100-year-old Siamese rosewood forest. So the abbot actually instructed the monks to close the temple doors during the night to prevent illegal logging gangs from entering the temple and cutting the rosewoods. So I think it's a very inspiring story of how you cannot just depend on the government, but also you can take actions yourself, direct actions. And you are talking about even religious groups, monks. I think especially religious groups should step out of their temple and care about societal issues much more, right?
Because religious plays an important role in everybody's lives. Like when religious authorities, they start doing something, like public will be able to see it and they can make it as their role model, you know. It's like even the monk, they came out to fight for the trees. Like, what are we doing? We should be joining them, you know. Not just saving the trees, saving the river, saving maybe other stuffs, the environments. So it is a relief to see how the monk in Thailand, they made an attempt to stop the illegal loggings. So environment shouldn't only be preserved by authorities. Authorities, like all of us, should play a role.
Right. It's a common responsibility of all. And especially I would say that for the religious group to practice your religion that way, in a way that would help social change and positive changes in society. Right? Right, that to me is the true religion of compassion.
We can actually start doing it, not like as huge as go and save the trees, you know. We can start by doing small little things every day, like don't throw the rubbish everywhere, you know. This is the things that is lacking in most of the in the majorities of the people right now.
And it strikes me that in Thailand, one of the story that I also know of when I was there is that the monks actually helped to preserve the forest in the past by how do you call it, by ordinating the trees. So ordination is normally done when you want to become a monk, right? So what the monks do now is to ordain the trees so that they become sacred, so that no one can chop the trees down. Yeah, so that's one of the creative way.
It's very nice.
Yeah, that's true, especially in northern Thailand, Chiang Mai and whatnot. That's happening, and also now. Talking about that region, we have a news piece from the Cambodia Daily, which is unions who are now pushing for the minimum wage hike. We have reported earlier talking about how the recent protests by the International Trade Union Confederation and or other trade unions have resulted in 5 workers being killed because they were shot by the government. And now 21 workers are in jail since January. So the ITUC is urging the everyone to respect that, you know, they shouldn't. They're just asking for a minimum wage hike.
Yes.
And they shouldn't be so violently cracked down that people have to die and the authorities have to shoot them.
Yes.
You know, it's a matter of livelihood for them.
Yes.
It's not, they're not trying to like bring down the government or something.
It is very sad seeing how the Cambodian workers were being oppressed by their governments, and then it's great to see how the international world has got involved in fighting the right for Cambodian workers. Like, we need to let Cambodian governments know that the world is watching you. Like, you cannot do whatever you want to your citizens. You know, like there is people is watching you, and then there's action we can take to prevent that from happening again. And then there's a statement that Mr. Thorn made from Cambodia. He said, if the government cannot solve all our problems, then the investors will consider whether to invest in Cambodia or not. So Cambodia government should really look into this issue, because if the human rights violation persists in the country, it will undoubtedly affect the country's economic development. We as other countries, we have a choice, like whether or not we wanted to invest in Cambodia. If we all think that is a wrong thing to violate the human rights, it's a wrong thing to kill all the Cambodian workers just because they were doing demonstration because they want demonstration for the wage, then you kill them. So we can say no to them. We doesn't want to invest in their country. So it actually affects their economic development. So there's really things that they should look at, the Cambodia governments.
And this time we noted that there was trade unions from Southeast Asia region who supported this group in Cambodia, representative from Sri Lanka, the Philippines, Fiji, Singapore. Yeah, although I didn't see Malaysia in that list, but I would have to comment that trade unions in Malaysia has been systematically weakened through laws and policy through the decades of the state ruling.
Oh.
Yeah, and so but this is an entirely extensive topic that should be discussed in one of our sessions that we will elaborate on. And now from Jakarta Globe, talking about how Aceh Party members were arrested in an election violence crackdown. Yeah, so police charged 21 members and supporters of Aceh Party because there was a string of violent attacks on rival political parties, and this is for the upcoming April legislative election. So 50 people was arrested, and it seems like even people was shot after an Aceh Party event in a village. So he's injured, but we don't know how badly yet. And besides that, there's also 2 men who were badly beaten. So I personally think that we should be more mature than to involve ourselves in this kind of attacking, like literally physical attacks kind of
Yes.
politics. Not even verbal attacks should be practiced actually.
Yes.
Even though we see that a lot locally,
Yeah.
I think we should move on from that kind of politics.
Yes.
Then a politics to be based on analyzing the policy that each party propose,
Yeah.
and it's a policy based debate
Yeah.
instead of a people
Yeah.
based debate.
Exactly, because everyone is a human being. How could you do something to hurt another human being for this, like, for the sake of politics? Politics meant to solve problems, meant to get a better future, better countries. Like, why are you hurting each other's for politics? It's not right thing to do. Like, and violence will never solve problems. It just makes things goes worse.
Right.
And promotes hatred as well.
Right. I think one of the positive development that we noted is coming from Philippines. A Senator Santiago actually urges their graduates. This is a news piece from the Inquirer. So he urged the young, fresh graduates and youth that if any lawmakers are found to be misusing public funds, they should take actions towards them. This is in the context of a recent Priority Development Assistance Fund scam that happened in Philippines, because we're talking about how a fund that was supposed to be used for spending on priority development projects of Philippines, which is mostly on the local government, but instead they were misused, yeah, and this was exposed in an expose by the Enquirer. So one of the very important takeaway is that the senator actually urged the youth that you should shame them and take your campaign to Facebook, Twitter, or Tumblr. Do not vote for this kind of politicians. And I think that this is particularly important because it empowers the youth.
Yes.
To do something instead of just being apolitical.
Yes, she made another statement that I'm really agree with. She said, since they pay taxes by buying goods, for the youth, since the youth pay taxes by buying goods, eating at restaurants, and using public transport, so the youth have a right to be angry with the politicians who stole these taxes. So a lot of youth thinks that politics doesn't have anything to do with them. They think that, okay, my life goes on. Why do I need to be bothered by all these political issues and such? But actually, if the politicians, they are misusing all their rights and they involved in corruptions, it actually affects us as the citizens of the countries. So it is very good that this lady is the Miriam Defensor. She urged all the youth to be participating in this kind of political issues, and then they should be able to analyze the situations and in return voice out their own opinions. Not saying like they should be judging all the politicians and such, but they should know more about what's happening in the politics industry, and then they could know what's happening and voice out their own opinions.
So I think that this is good news for the youth community.
Yes.
And now we have another piece of good news for the LGBT community. And this is a pretty historic moment, I believe, coming from Vietnam, Thanh Nien News, talking about how a new bill could potentially make de facto same-sex marriage okay in Vietnam. So the context is that, worldwide, 16 countries and parts of Mexico and the US have laws allowing same-sex marriage and domestic partnerships, which is mostly in the Europe and South America. But I think in Vietnam, and especially in Southeast Asia, this might be a first, right? Because we are talking about how a draft update of the marriage and family law in Vietnam is scheduled to be voted by lawmakers. So they propose that there should be a lift of the ban on same-sex marriage. And experts and insiders are calling for the practice to be legalized outright, giving LGBT communities a full marital rights. So the committee is hoping that the same-sex marriage will be legalized and regulated by law. So this draft is a proposal to leave a previous ban on same-sex marriage. So, but we don't know if they will pass it yet.
Yes,
but
they're still working on it.
Yeah, but I think that it's a positive development because for the first time it's actually talked about. I don't know if in Malaysia even if we do talk about it.
Yes, exactly.
It's a taboo.
Yeah.
No.
According to Dean Xuantao, he's a director of the Legislative Research Institute in Vietnam. So he said that same-sex marriage is recognized by just a few countries and not in any ASEAN nation. So none of the ASEAN nation has recognized same-sex marriage. And then it seems like we haven't norms in ASEAN countries. It's like same-sex marriage is something not to be talked about. Is it because of our culture, or is it because of the majority mindsets or something? So, is it because of that lah?
Maybe it's because of the culture of being more conservative, than to be open to all this. What we will call new elements to our culture, and also I think religion play a very big role as well, especially in Southeast Asia, where the majority religion is Islam and Buddhism. So although Buddhism actually don't ban same-sex marriage, in fact, some nuns, for example, from Mahayana tradition in Taiwan and whatnot, actually do endorse. And she also conducted a same-sex marriage ceremony. But of course we know that for Thailand case, however, the Theravadian tradition, it's a more patriarchal system. So even having nuns fully ordained with full status as a man is still an issue. You don't get the same kind of privileges, same kind of status as a monk.
So it all actually depends on their mindsets, right? But there's a good news is that we in ASEAN, we have an advanced step of not banning it, not banning the same-sex marriage. So at least if you do it, like it's not illegal. Actually, it's just that it's not legal. So it's like a gray zone for all the LGBTs. I would say maybe it's a good news, like. So we could still work on it, like to make it legal one day.
I think that we'll definitely be watching LGBT news a little more, and also inviting a speaker from the LGBT community in Malaysia, which I should add a note that Malaysia actually has banned sexuality merdeka before, which is translated as independent or free sexuality, something like that, because it seems like it's pretty controversial, and they wouldn't want to endorse that as a culture and whatnot. So
I think mostly the saying those parties is from those really like
extremist groups.
Yes, I would say,
Right. Okay. So, however, we think that the youth might think differently because from Yangon Youth Declaration, which happened during ASEAN Youth Statement, ASEAN Youth Forum, they also endorse these LGBT rights.
Is it?
Yeah. And let us just read some pieces that we think is really pretty inspiring from the Youth Declarations. The slogan is now "One Community, One Strategy, Youth for Unity." So in the Yangon Declaration, in the youth statement that we released, is that we, the people of ASEAN aspire for the promotion of non-discrimination, equality, peace, protection, sustainability, and inclusive development of the ASEAN community, which is in line with our principles of human rights, democracy, justice, and freedom in all aspects of our life. And we, the young people, strongly calls for the creation of a sustainable, rights-based, inclusive, people-centered, and youth-driven regional community. And the young people also call for strongly for an affirmative action by our leaders in ASEAN countries to create an enabling environment at a regional, national, and local level that highly address the needs and aspirations of young people. So I think, like I mentioned, that there is a lot of demands that they talk about, and we will gradually talk about all these demands in our future talk show. One of them is definitely LGBT as well, like non-discriminations, whether is it your political inclination, your sexual orientations, your gender identities, gender expression, disabilities, indigenous people, religious minorities, and a lot of other vulnerable groups. These are things that they think that first you must have meaningful youth participation, and you must treat them all equally.
Yes, I think exposing more youth in all these kind of sectors actually let them gain more knowledges about people who's like religious minorities or LGBTs. Like not knowing them makes them stereotypes.
Right.
Sometimes actually it's not that they was born discriminating these kind of people. They was not born. It was actually the mindset that was instilled by by other people, by the peers around them. So in order to change their mindset, they really need to involve themselves in these kind of sectors so that they will know, like, why do LGBT behave this way, that LGBT is not a disease that can be cured or need to be cured.
I think that we're having a shift of mindset here. It seems like the previous generation compared to the youth today which the youth today has a more liberal kind of mindset towards, acceptance and embracing all this.
Yeah, I think it's because of the ability to get to know news all around the world. Like we could access the information faster, better, and then in a massive way. Like we get to know what's happening in Africa. Like back in 20 years back, we might not know. We might be able to only access this kind of information through newspaper, and not everybody read newspaper back then. Right. Like only the elite one. Like if you have money to buy the newspaper, then you would get to read it. But now we are like everything is easily you can get it.
But do you think that one of the arguments that let's say the more right wing or extreme group would claim is that this is all Western culture. This is not right, and then let's say in our religion we'll send them to correction camp. Do you think that it's Western culture?
I don't think so. I think that it's just that in Western culture they move faster, so they're like one step ahead of us. So they get to go to the stage where everybody gets to speak.
Right.
As compared to maybe ASEAN countries, for example. So when they already did it, and that we kind of do the same movements too, and then they said that this is Western culture. But I don't think so. In Western countries, there's people who discriminate LGBTs too. There's people who discriminate religious minorities too. So it's not that it's just the Western culture itself that brings this kind of movements in ASEAN countries. It's just that they did it first, and then we do it after that. So it become like, okay, we are the follower.
Yeah, that might be true. And also how, let's say, our society might be also largely influenced by more conservative religion kind of outlook of the world, yeah?
Yeah.
So and this kind of topics are not really talked about. Like you
Yes.
mentioned, it's not. We are still creating the open space to
Yes.
talk about all these issues.
Yes. It's still a taboo in Malaysia, I would say.
Yeah, I would say that I personally had my first eye opener when I was in Poland and also in the US actually. Like before this, I didn't know like that any of my friends are one of the LGBT community people. Yeah, so and because it's so rare to talk about it, so rare to experience it, you feel like, oh, this is such a strange thing. Like, you know, something might be wrong with them.
Yeah.
And then it is after, you know, knowing them and being friends, and you're like,
Yes.
oh, actually, they are like me. They're not that different, yeah?
Yes. They are
So-
human beings too. And love between same sex is also love, I would say. Like, but many people, they doesn't understand because they were not exposed to people like that. They were in their comfort zone, and then if they saw someone with, oh, it's so weird, like I will not go near to this kind of person or something like that. So I hope that ASEAN will make an advanced move
Well,
in future.
I think Thailand is already pretty advanced.
Yes,
isn't
actually,
it?
it's quite advanced. It's just that legally, legally, like it's not really that they say I approve this kind of things,
Right.
even though that it doesn't really ban it, lah.
But yeah, but I think that there are a lot of movement on the ground
Yeah.
trying to push through certain laws in Thailand as well.
Yes.
Parties who are campaigning for policies like that. All right. Now, also a news from Thailand from the Human Rights Watch talking about this Muslim groups that originated from China. We will call them, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but Uyghurs, and they're coming from Western China. And now that they have arrived in Thailand, they are forced to return to China, even though that knowingly that they will face severe persecution, threat of arrest and torture. And these are groups that are of Turkish minority descendants, predominantly Muslims, and like I mentioned, Western Chinese people. Yeah, so I'm just personally curious. Would you know why the Chinese government would want to torture them? I mean, they do have a pretty large Muslim population in China, isn't it?
Yeah, actually, I'm not too sure why, but it seems similar to how why Myanmar doesn't want Rohingya Muslims to be in their country. It seems like it's a discrimination towards a certain religion. I would say it's like they doesn't want to they doesn't want to recognize them as their citizens. So they are like constantly discriminating them, constantly pressuring them, oppressing them. I'm not too sure why, but I think it's because of the religions, I guess.
But do you know that the Uyghur has a population of more than 10 million in China as of 2009? And this is, we're talking about a very large number.
Yeah.
How I don't think it's possible to like whatever you want to do, like exterminate them from China. They're talking about 10 million people.
Yeah.
And this is like half the population of
Yes.
Malaysia already.
But in China, they are still the minorities, you know.
Yeah, but I think that it's also linked to the Xinjiang separatists fighters. That's why that they are afraid of this group. I think it's also a general trend of Islamophobia here.
Yeah.
Because Xinjiang is a predominantly Muslim populated state. Yeah. So okay, right. Any other messages for our listeners?
I don't think so.
I wish you guys have a great day, whether it's at work today or wherever you are with your family. So have a great day and stay tuned for more news tomorrow. See you. Bye.
See you. Bye.